Grab your French horn and a flaming sword because we have the latest season of Lucifer, and this one even has a musical episode.
Another one bites the dust.
Yes, it's been 9 months since the first half of Lucifer Season 5 was released after the coronavirus shut down production, and with only one more season to go, Lucifer is slowly coming to an end.
No! Hell no!
In this video, we'll be taking a deep dive into the second half of Season 5, its biggest unanswered questions, and what it could mean for the final season. But before we descend into hell, make sure to like and subscribe. Seriously, only about 8% of you are subscribed. And if I don't get those numbers up, my dad won't be proud of me.
And I am very proud of the man you've become.
16 episodes have culminated in an epic battle between the Archangel Michael and the devil himself, Lucifer. While Lucifer was cast aside and banished from heaven, Michael became God's right-hand man, but their animosity toward one another stems from their lack of love from their father.
But instead, it's just made me realize one simple truth. That you will never love us. Because you're incapable of love.
Lucifer resents having been banished to hell, while Michael resents that Lucifer is the golden child who got his own kingdom even though he openly rebelled against his father.
When your twin is the light bringer, turns out you have no choice but to live in the shadows.
Michael has always been the child in his brother's shadow. So when God announces his retirement, it leaves Michael with the perfect opportunity to take control and become God himself, something Lucifer won't stand for. Michael doesn't care for human life. He hasn't experienced what it's like to live amongst humanity, and thus he'd make for a tyrannical god. Whereas Michael couldn't care less about humans, Lucifer wants to become God for a human.
It gets worse. I'm doing it for the love of a human. I am trying to be God so that I can finally be worthy of her.
This dichotomy is shown in the production design when Michael shows up at Lucifer's bar, Lux. Lux, by the way, meaning light. Look at the background here as Michael is framed against hellish red and Lucifer heavenly blue. We'll even see how the lighting bathes Lucifer in this blue glow. Michael has come with an offer for Lucifer. We actually haven't seen Michael since episode 9 when God banished him from Earth to keep the peace. But now, since God has left the universe to be with his wife and hers, it's a total free-for-all. While Lucifer has been on Earth, Michael has been gaining support among the other angels and assembling pieces of the flaming sword, a weapon which can kill celestials. It's composed of 3 parts, the blade, hilt, and necklace, which bind it all together.
Every piece of the flaming sword has a power. Azrael's blade is death, the hilt, divine love, and your necklace is the strength that binds them together.
Michael tells Lucifer that he has all the parts, but that's a lie. In episode 15, we learn that Amenadiel's necklace, one of the 3 parts of the flaming sword which he left on the grave of Caleb Mayfield, who you may remember from season 4, is in the possession of a black market dealer named TJ Ross. Amenadiel put this necklace on Caleb's body before he was buried, but Lucifer suggests that a technician at the coroner's office must have taken it before Caleb's body was buried. This tech is Jonathan Donnelly, a man running a scam where he'd steal loved ones' personal items and sell them back to their families for profit. But Jonathan is killed and the item falls into the hands of TJ. Those in possession of it have superhuman strength, which is why when Lucifer and Chloe confront him, he's able to kick Lucifer halfway across the room. But back to Michael's offer. He doesn't want there to be any unnecessary bloodshed and is willing to give Lucifer his old job as ruler of hell, but this time he can rule alongside Chloe, making her queen of hell. The only problem is,
only someone's guilt can take them to hell.
Michael says Chloe is damned to hell because of the guilt she feels for the death of Dan Espinosa. After all, it was the case she was working on that got him killed, but more on this guilt thing in a bit. Speaking of Dan, Mazikeen, Amenadiel, and Linda are packing up things after his tragic death in the penultimate episode. He was killed by a group of French mercenaries hired by Michael to locate the missing piece of the flaming sword. This death hits Maze especially hard, and no wonder considering her character arc this season. Maze has had to struggle with whether or not she'll be able to have a soul. In fact, she makes a deal with Michael to get her an audience with God, the only person that can grant her such a thing. Maze is a demon, and demons don't have souls. Although God doesn't end up giving her one, he does give her a glimmer of hope.
But a demon can't grow a soul.
Can't she?
Maze then tells Linda a few episodes later that it feels like a soul is growing inside her like a baby, but it isn't until the arrival of Eve that Maze sees the downside of having a soul.
Turns out having a soulmate that can die
It's torture.
Having a soul means having to endure the pain of losing those we love, something Maze experiences when she almost loses Eve. She ends up breaking up with Eve because of this. Her own personal hell would be to relive losing her every day, which is why she makes a deal with Lucifer to become the ruler of hell should he become God. If she rules hell, she escapes that torment. But what Maze fails to realize is that you can't have love and joy without a bit of pain.
Sometimes when you care about people, you have to go through pain and loss. But that's the price of joy.
I think Linda puts it best here saying,
Never loving anyone is far worse than loss.
Lucifer tells Chloe he needs to be God for Dan's sake. He sees this system as unjust. How can a good man like Dan spend eternity in hell?
Your system is not only broken, it's unjust.
Remember that this season was written during the events of Black Lives Matter and the 2020 presidential election, which may be why plot points like voting between two people you really couldn't care for winning and breaking down unjust systems have wedged their way into the story. Remiel arrives with a cryptic message before succumbing to her wounds that were given to her by Michael. Because her wound isn't burned, Chloe surmises that Michael must not have all the parts of the sword, so if they can get their hands on the final part before Michael does, they might stand a chance at stopping him. Remiel holds a clue, a feather, which they give to Ella for analysis. Ella has gone on her own journey this season. Ever since she found out her boyfriend was a serial killer, she's buried herself in work and refuses to see anyone else, even Dan's hunky friend, Carol Corbett. The two meet briefly at Dan's funeral, so expect him to make more of an appearance in season 6. The emu feather covered in yeast ends up leading them to an abandoned beer factory.
Beer.
Lucifer ends up disguising himself as Michael in order to retrieve the necklace from TJ, but is ultimately thwarted when the real Michael arrives. Unlike Lucifer, Michael doesn't spare TJ's life, which really points at one of the main differences between these two. Lucifer has reverence for humanity, while Michael does not. Lucifer and Chloe are able to escape, but not without leaving Michael with all the pieces of the flaming sword. And with the vote for a new god tomorrow, it's not looking good for them. Maze catfishes Eve as Steve, which is kind of funny because Steve is just Eve with an ST. She's come to the realization that the joy and love she has for Eve far outweighs the pain if she loses her. Shoehorned in this episode is the idea of falling and getting back up.
Falling is how humans learn. It's how I learned.
Linda remarks how Charlie falls more than some of the other children, but that's just part of growing up. As Amenadiel echoes,
You have to risk falling if you want to fly.
Chloe and Lucifer will both fall this episode, but come back stronger than they were before. The final battle ironically takes place at the LA Memorial Coliseum, a stadium commissioned in 1921 to honor the veterans of World War I. 100 years later, an entirely new battle will wage here. Lucifer, much like Jon Snow, refuses to bend the knee, instead asking for a vote. In a speech, he tells them that Michael is using fear to sway the other angels to his side, a tactic some other politicians have used.
They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists.
Only ZADKIEL, the angel of righteousness, and Raziel come to Lucifer's side. ZADKIEL has seen how Lucifer is wanting to be God out of love, while Raziel was disheartened to find out Michael killed Remiel in his quest for power. The other notable angel here is Gabriel. It was her who brought back Azrael's blade to Michael after it was tossed into the goddess's universe way back in season 2. With the vote finished, Michael proclaims that he is God, but nothing happens, leaving them to believe the vote has to be unanimous. And if it has to be unanimous, that means the opposing votes must be killed. And of course, when your life is on the line, you burst into "can't touch this." This is all a ploy to buy some time, as Maze and Eve have harnessed their own army of the dead from a group of convicts we saw barrel over a cliff at the beginning of the final episode. You may even notice that Maze controls the dead by speaking Lilim, the language of demons, the name deriving from Lilith, Adam's first wife and Mazikeen's mother. She's important, but we'll get to her in a bit. Michael laughs at Lucifer's pitiful attempt at an army, especially Chloe's gun, which won't work on them. Angels are invulnerable. That is until he finds out they have melted down Maze's demon blade into bullets, which can kill them.
Turns out melting down one demon blade makes a lot of bullets.
To avoid further bloodshed, Michael and Lucifer fight one-on-one to the death to decide who becomes God. A bit of an unfair fight since Michael has the flame sword, but Lucifer gets a bit of a helping hand with a staff made from the Tree of Life. And when it looks like Michael might finally persevere, Chloe rips out the necklace, but ultimately is killed by Michael. Lucifer runs to her side, and in her final words, Chloe reveals she does not have any guilt, thus sending sending her to heaven where she will never be able to see Lucifer again. Lucifer will burst into flames if he ever sets foot there, but Lucifer doesn't care. He's willing to risk everything for the person he loves, and so he sets off for heaven. And when he arrives there, he is magically still alive. That's because he has Lilith's ring of immortality. In the first half of the season, we saw how Lilith, not wanting to be immortal anymore, transferred her immortality into the ring and gave it to Lucifer. The power of heaven, however, is too much, and it only has enough juice to take one person back. So Lucifer sacrifices himself, takes off the ring, and gives it to Chloe so she can be resurrected back on Earth. Fun fact, the actor who plays Chloe's dad is actually married to the actress who plays Mazikeen. He also refers to Chloe as My Little Monkey, a title of a season 2 episode where Chloe tries to track down her father's killer. But there are huge implications with Lucifer's discovery that Lee Garner is also in heaven. Lee has been a recurring character since season 2, with it being a reoccurring joke that he always appears in the beginning of the show's season premieres, which is exactly what happened at the beginning of season 5, for example.
You want to join us?
Hell to the yeah!
But Lee is supposed to be in hell. How is it that he's in heaven? No soul has ever made it from hell to heaven. Lee tells him that he's not exactly sure, but he faced his family and his guilt and boom. Heaven. This gives us hope for Dan in season 6. If Lee could face his guilt, why not Dan? And if Lucifer becomes God and May's the ruler of hell, I doubt this is the last we'll see of Dan Espinosa. Lucifer's sacrifice also comes on the heels of him saying that thing we've waited 5 full seasons for. Remember that Lucifer can't tell a lie, so when he tells Chloe he loves her, he really means it, and that's part of Lucifer's character arc. He believed that he was like his father, incapable of love.
Like him, I am incapable of love.
But his feelings for Chloe and his sacrifice prove otherwise. He is not like his father, and perhaps this points to how different of a god he will be. When Chloe reawakens on Earth, she catches Michael by surprise as she's holding on to the necklace, giving her super strength. She's able to pick up Azrael's blade, the only thing that can kill a Celestial, but before she's about to kill Michael, Lucifer appears. Lucifer is now God, pretty much confirmed by him saying,
"Oh my me,"
instead of, "Oh my god." But as Chloe asks,
Lucifer, how?
I don't know.
Lucifer himself isn't sure. This will undoubtedly be addressed next season, but if I were to hazard a guess, it has to do with love and sacrifice. Sacrifice has been a big component of season 5. In fact, many of the episodes this season deal with family members sacrificing themselves to save those they love. For example, Linda pleads guilty to murder in episode 13 to protect her daughter, and Peter in episode 9 pleads guilty to murder to protect his family.
You were willing to sacrifice yourself for your own children.
Of course. That's what fatherhood is.
Lucifer had to prove his love for humanity through sacrifice. That was the key factor in deciding who becomes God. And this was all part of God's plan. Remember, he's omniscient and knew of this outcome in advance. Lucifer has now become the father of humanity as God. And as God, Lucifer tells Chloe not to kill Michael. He will be a different type of God, one who is willing to give second chances. He even chops off Michael's wings just like his were chopped off after his failed rebellion. The other angels, including Michael, bend the knee to him as their new deity. Above him you can see the sun and flames. His last name is Morningstar after all. But where does this leave us for season 6? This episode was originally supposed to be the series finale, but was changed after the show was picked up for a surprise 6th and final season, so it's entirely possible the creators always imagined the ending of Lucifer with him as God. Now you might think, where can we go from here? And there are a couple of clues and loose threads. First, we have Dan in hell. Actor Kevin Alejandro, who plays Dan, is directing some of the episodes next season, and one of them is titled Goodbye Lucifer. These episode titles have already been revealed, which give us some clues. With titles like Goodbye Lucifer and Partners Till the End, I can't help but think that Lucifer's reign as God, which will undoubtedly be the focus of season 6, will come to an end. If I were to guess, Lucifer will give up his title to Amenadiel so he can live as a mortal with Chloe. If Lucifer is God, it also begs the question, who will be the villain? Who can possibly take on God? Well, it's possible that there may not be a villain like Michael, but that the season will focus on Lucifer balancing his new life as God. Chloe struggled with how Lucifer will deal with this balancing act of being God and a partner. Lucifer also saw how the job affected his father's relationships with his family. I also don't think Lucifer will fully have all his godlike powers, at least not yet. This will likely be something he has to learn over time rather than him inheriting them at the snap of a finger. One of the episodes is titled Save the Devil, Save the World, which hints at something much larger coming into play, and with this series dabbling in alternate universes, it will be interesting to see how the writers navigate the problem of an antagonist for a seemingly unkillable character. But what did you think of Lucifer Season 5, and what are your theories for the 6th and final season? I want to hear them in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and make sure to like and subscribe, it really helps the channel out, and for more bad takes you can always follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ThinkStoryYT. Until next time, remember, Daddy loves you very much.